Yes, Mr. Millett. Now, our next witness, I think, is Mr. Collins.
Yes.
Is that right?
That's right, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Collins, whom we are taking by video link from overseas.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Collins.
Good afternoon.
And can I just ask, can you see me and hear me clearly?
I can.
Good. Thank you very much. Well, thank you for making yourself available to give evidence. You should have on your screen the words of the affirmation. Is that there for you?
I do.
Good. Could I ask you to make the affirmation then, please?
I do solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Very good. Thank you very much. Now, can I just run through a couple of things before I invite Mr. Millett to put some questions to you? First of all, and I've done this with every witness who's given evidence over a link of this kind, can I ask you to confirm that you're alone in the room from which you're giving evidence?
I am.
Thank you. Can I ask you to confirm, if you would, that your mobile phone is in another room, please?
It's. Do you want me to put it? I have it on airplane.
Well, is it possible for you to put it somewhere completely out of reach?
Mm-hmm.
All
Shall
right.
I?
Yes, could you do that? I'm sorry to be so demanding. Thank you very much. And finally, could I ask you to confirm that you don't have any other electronic device with you that's capable of receiving messages?
I have not.
No. I'm sorry we have to go through all that, but it's been a protocol which we've applied to all the witnesses who are giving evidence from remote locations for reasons which I probably don't need to explain. I've been inviting Mr. Millett to put some questions to you in just a moment. Can I just tell you first that we shall have a break during the afternoon, somewhere around about 3:15, 3:20 or thereabouts. But if you feel that you need a break for any other reason at some other time, will you just indicate that and we'll do our best to accommodate you? All right. Is there anything you'd like to ask me before we start? No?
No, there isn't.
Right. Thank you very much. In that case, I'll invite Mr. Millett to put some questions to you. Yes, Mr. Millett.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Collins, good afternoon. I can see you because I'm looking into the monitor. Can you see me and hear me?
I can.
Thank you. Can I start by thanking you very much for coming to the inquiry, even though remotely, and assisting us with our investigations. We're extremely grateful to you. My questions are intended to be short and simple, but if you have any difficulty understanding a question or you would like me to put it a different way or to break it up, I'm very happy to do that. As the Chairman has just said, we'll take a scheduled break during the course of the afternoon, but if you need a break at any other time, please just let us know and we can take a short break. Can I also ask you please to keep your voice up and clear so that the transcriber who's sitting in this room with us here can get down what you're saying. Also, not to nod or shake your head because a yes or no doesn't go onto the transcript. You have to say. And now, you've made one witness statement to the inquiry, and you'll find it on the screen, I hope, in front of you when it's brought up. It's IWS 402334. Can we just have the first page of that there? IWS. Yes, there it is. Can you confirm for us, please, that that is the first page of your witness statement to the inquiry dated 21st of September 2020?
That is.
Can you please go to page 32? There's a signature there. It's quite faint, above the date, underneath the statement of truth. Is that your signature?
That is.
Have you read this statement recently?
I have.
And can you confirm that its contents are true?
As far as I can tell.
Yes. Now, this is a very detailed statement, which will be published on the inquiry's website as of now, later today. My questions are intended to be directed to any further assistance that you can give us in addition to that statement. Can I begin with some background, very briefly? It's right, isn't it, I think, that you lived at flat 185 in Grenfell Tower on floor 18?
I did.
And you did so from April 2014 until 31st of October 2016?
I did.
You did. And is it right that you rented your flat directly from the leaseholder of that flat, Tunde Awaderu?
Correct.
Yes. Now, we know that during your time as a resident, you became the chair of Grenfell Compact, and I'll come back to that at some point later on. Can I start with some basic questions about fire safety information? When you moved into Grenfell Tower, what fire safety information, if any, were you given?
None ever, as far as I'm aware. There may have been a leaflet, but I'm not certain.
So to be clear, did you ever see something called Link magazine?
I have, whether it was the version.
Right. Did you get Link magazine through the door?
I wouldn't recollect.
What about Grenfell Tower refurbishment newsletters?
I've seen it in other places.
Right. What about Grenfell Tower refurbishment newsletters? Did you ever receive those?
Yes.
You did. Did you read them?
Not always.
No. Let's look at...
And not fully, necessarily.
Right.
Especially at first.
Forgive me, Mr. Collins, it's my fault. There's, I think, a slight delay on the line, and I'm over-speaking. I don't mean to. I'll bear that in mind. Can I ask you to look at ART 402606? That is a Grenfell Tower regeneration newsletter dated July 2014. Just from the first page, do you think that was familiar?
I do not.
Can we go to page 2, please? And look at the bottom of that page. You'll see the words emergency fire arrangements. And it says our long-standing stay-put policy stays in force until you are told otherwise, etc. Do you remember seeing that or receiving that?
I did know of the procedure. Like, I wasn't sure. Like, I wouldn't recommend. I didn't feel like. This is a story. Like, I didn't feel like I would be safe to stay in the tower.
Right.
If there was a fire.
Were you clear in your mind about the fire safety procedure to follow if there was a fire during...
Sorry, and I didn't know why I didn't feel safe, but I felt like if there was a fire in the tower, I wouldn't be safe to stay in there.
Right. Did you understand the fire safety procedures that this document was describing?
No, not really.
Right.
Like, I knew of the stay-put policy.
Right. Did you have any information about emergency fire arrangements from any other source other than this newsletter that you can remember?
I heard from several sources that the right thing to do was to stay in the tower.
What were the other sources?
And await someone coming to rescue. Well, residents.
Right.
In meetings, they talked about the stay put strategy. They talked about that's how we were supposed to act. We didn't have a lot of information from the council or the TMO, as far as I was aware.
Did you ever visit the TMO website?
I did, but only to find out their service standards and whether they were met.
Were you aware that you could find fire safety advice on the TMO website?
I was not.
Now, I want to ask you some questions about communications with residents during the refurbishment. And I'd like to start by looking at your statement on page 6, please, paragraphs 24 to 29. and you describe there the relationship between the TMO and residents about the refurbishment. And you say, and I'm summarising, that you became aware that a majority of the residents of the tower had concerns about the refurbishment, paragraph 25. There was a meeting on the 17th of March 2015, attended by over 100 residents, and that's paragraph 27, as you can see on the screen. And then you say in paragraph 26, by this time, this is March 15, I had gravitated towards Ed Defan, you say, and you say he was thinking most clearly about how the community could respond. He had the drive, knowledge, insight and determination to do something and to communicate the voice of the residents in the face of very little response. Had you actually spoken to Edward Defan about your own concerns?
I had.
And what was the
On
occasion for
several
that? I'm sorry.
occasions. We spoke on several occasions about the tower, our concerns. I'm not sure. What do you mean?
Had you shared your own private concerns with Mr. Defan?
Sure. I was very concerned about the tower and everyone in it, really, and the treatment, how they were met or how they weren't listened to. And it had been over multiple years. That was my experience. It wasn't just Ed, it was Steve Power, and other people. Quite a lot of people talked about the tower and the treatment of the terrible treatment. The words they would use would be terrible. Yeah, they were treated over years. And I wasn't sure at first. I wasn't sure about the assumptions, but over time it became really clear they weren't assuming the treatment.
Can I ask you to go to TMO 008378884? This is a letter dated the 24th of March 2015 to Claire Williams. It's quite a long letter. And the signature to it at the end is on page 5, if we can just see that. So this is a letter, can you confirm, you wrote to Claire Williams on that date, and the subject is 185 Grenfell Tower and Grenfell Tower regeneration works, yes?
Yes.
Yeah. Can we go to page 2, please? And if you look at the second paragraph down on that page, you refer to a meeting. And halfway through that paragraph, you say, the minutes of that meeting demonstrate, and I should have said, this is a meeting on Tuesday, the 17th of March, 2015. And you say, the minutes of that meeting demonstrate an overwhelming community and shared sense of poor consultation from TMO and Ryden, extreme dissatisfaction with the process of consultation, concerns over the ongoing safety of work, safety within residences and communal areas, and massive unhappiness with the quality of work being performed within and around people's homes and lives. Now, you refer to the minutes there. Did you have the minutes of that meeting to hand when you wrote this letter?
What's the date of the letter?
It's the 24th of March, 2015. I can show you the minutes if it would help your
I
recollection.
may not at the time.
Right,
I may have had draft minutes.
right.
I had spoken at least with people. I'm certain the minutes exist, and they're in my statement.
They do. And my question was really whether you had the minutes in front of you when you wrote this letter.
I don't know.
What?
I can't say for sure.
No, thank you. What prompted you to write this letter?
I could check.
Well, let me just show you the minutes and see if your recollection improves. MET 3070936, please. And you can see that this is an email from you to John Willis.
Okay.
Above it, we've just skipped down from that. And this is the email you wrote on the 25th of March to Claire Williams the next day. And then there are the minutes set out below. Can you see that? Minutes from the Grenfell Tower emergency residence meeting, yes?
Yes.
Yes. Does that prompt your recollection? If you just look at the substance of it, does that prompt your recollection as to whether you had the minutes in front of you when you wrote the letter?
I'm familiar with the minutes. Whether they were in front of me when I wrote the letter, I'm not sure.
Do you remember what prompted you to write
I was aware of the content at the time. That's for sure.
Do you remember what prompted you to write the letter?
I don't know. So many occasions. I thought about this, but I don't know how to explain. I don't have the ability to go into the detail.
All right.
There are so many within.
Well, I'll try and keep it general then to help you.
I wasn't unsure. I wasn't uncertain. I didn't think the work was done well.
Did you expect this letter to be? Did you expect this letter to be treated as a formal complaint to the TMO?
I did, though. At the time, I wasn't aware, or didn't have awareness of the complaints process.
Can we go back to the letter, please? It's the previous document, and look at page 2. TMO 00837884, page 2. Look at the bottom of the first page, and I'll read it out to you. It says, and we need to go to the bottom of page 1, please. Bottom of page 1, and over to page 2. It says in the second last paragraph, secondly, please could you recognise that the consultation with Grenfell Tower residents and the nature of the proposed and ongoing construction works within the tower are not fit for purpose. Even if TMO or Ryden believe they have consulting with the residents, those consultations have failed or have not been fit for purpose. The fact that over half the residents of the tower met last week and said so is evidence enough. The consultation I have personally experienced involved a Ryden site manager and liaison officer explaining in 2014 the minimal impact the improvement works would have on the aesthetics and layout of the flat. Then in 2015, a Ryden site manager and TMO representative, yourself, explaining the extreme aesthetic layout and safety issues which will result from the works when we are told pipes will be exposed, space lost, fixtures and fittings will not be as we were told they would be, hot pipes will be running where children's hands can reach them, etc. And you continue. If you thought that the consultation wasn't fit for purpose, as you say, what form of consultation were you expecting?
I wasn't expecting. I just wasn't certain it was working. And then I wanted to improve. Like I wasn't certain it was working. It wasn't working. By all impressions, it wasn't working. Whatever they were doing, it wasn't working well.
What wasn't working specifically? Can you explain in a bit more detail what it was that wasn't working as you saw it?
Mm-hmm. They changed the requirements. in the room, where the HIU unit was, the heat interface unit was to be placed.
Right.
It was going to be in a kitchen cupboard. It was going to be concealed. And then after there was no communication. Essentially, there was no consultation about the matter. And they told us it was going to be inserted somewhere where we didn't want it. We believed there were safety issues associated with where it was going to be put. We weren't sure about the design. It's not the design, but the designs, the specifications of the tower. They didn't seem to meet original quality, and I wasn't sure about the design solutions, whether we could see them or not. There was still concern amongst people in the tower about the design of things that we couldn't see at the time.
Can we go to MET 3070936, please? These are the minutes that I've just shown you, as set out in your email to Claire Williams of the 25th of March, 2015. And if we go to page 2, please. You can see that under the subheading Impact on Community and Main Concerns, towards the top of your screen, it says lack of meaningful consultation with residents and feeling of total disregard for tenant and leaseholders' well-being. Information provided to residents by TMO Ryden keeps changing without any consultation or agreement from tenants and leaseholders. Residents not satisfied with the standard of works carried out in communal hallway, and will not allow this vandalism inside our homes. Grave concerns at standard of works that have already been carried out inside a number of residents' properties by Ryden. Concern that TMO Ryden are using cheap materials and workmanship cutting corners. And then if we look at the last paragraph on page 2, other issues, we see that there were concerns raised, among other things, about changing floor numbers without consulting residents, and also problems with access into Grenfell Tower, and lack of signposting. Do you see that? Now, although
All of those are true, right? As far as we were aware, that was true.
Now, you didn't attend this meeting, did you?
No.
But you did see the minutes, I think, clearly,
I
because
did.
you've been able to, yes.
I was involved thereafter.
Did the specific concerns expressed in these minutes that I've picked out just now and read to you reflect your own individual concerns at the time?
They do feel that way.
You say they feel that way. Do you recall?
And look as well. I do.
Right.
Full well.
I'm sorry, I was about to ask you another question, but did you want to add something at the end there?
A little forceful. No need.
That's okay. Were you personally aware which residents were raising these concerns about quality of work or lack of meaningful consultation?
I do not. It felt like a good number. A lot of people. It wasn't everyone, sure, but there were a lot complaining.
And how did you know that yourself?
I was listening.
Did you go, but you weren't at the meetings? So who were you listening to?
I was listening to lots of people. I wasn't at all the meetings. I was at some. I was at meetings that, even before the 17th of March, people were talking about the tower and what wasn't working well. And we weren't sure. I can't name individuals. It doesn't feel like an individual thing to me. It's like it wasn't everyone, and yet there were so many people talking about the tower and the problems with the refurbishment.
Right. Did the minutes and the
I'm
parts
just not sure on an individual name. Like it wasn't Ed's initiative. You know, it wasn't one person trying to impersonate everyone. You know, people felt it wasn't right. It's a lot of people. It's how it felt, and I can't name. I mean, I could say Willie, or I could say Steve, or whoever, but it wasn't one person.
Do you agree that none of the concerns set out in these minutes, certainly those I've picked out and read to you, at least explicitly refer to fire safety?
Correct.
Yes.
It isn't a matter of fire safety.
Do you remember what, if any, specific fire safety matters residents were concerned about so far as regards the refurbishment?
There weren't fire safety issues in particular. I mean, there are some, and yet it isn't a matter of fire safety. I mean, it evidently was a fire safety problem, but it wasn't fire safety. It's about the culture and the leadership. For me, in my instance, I'm looking at culture and leadership and how things are done, and not the fire safety issues in particular. I would say they're outcomes. Whether you have a safe building, it's all about the leadership. It isn't, and about the culture. It isn't about sometimes the standards. Sometimes leadership is more important than the standards that you purport to follow.
Can we go back to your letter, TMO 008378884, page 2, please? And I'd just like to ask you about a paragraph on page 2, the third paragraph there, where you ask Miss Williams, Claire Williams, the following: please can you address, do you see, please can you address the failings in the consultation process and the poor standard of construction works being performed in and around the tower with immediate effect? How were you expecting Claire Williams to address the failings of the consultation process? By which I mean, what is it exactly that you wanted her to do?
I think it would have been simple to consult more and to involve residents in what they were doing and how they were involving residents.
Being specific, more what? More newsletters, more meetings? Can you give us an idea of what, in practical terms, you wanted to see that you weren't getting?
We wanted a one-to-one, yet it wasn't a one-to-one. We wanted to be engaged as a group and not to be kept apart or to be separated, not to be able to meet. Remarkably, we weren't able to meet with the TMO or Ryden. We weren't allowed, in their terms, we weren't allowed to be a group and to have a consultation. And that made no sense.
Did you raise with Ryden your concerns about the quality of the construction works that you've set out on page 2 of this letter? And you set out the details from halfway down there, as we see. Did you raise those with Ryden?
I don't think I did. Yeah, I raised the consultation process with them.
Right. Why didn't you raise these specific matters with Ryden directly?
I don't know.
Do you know that they had a resident liaison officer?
They weren't interested. They weren't there. No one was coming to a meeting. We were asking to meet and to raise our concerns. It wasn't until June or July that they would meet and address our concerns.
I see.
And the concerns are raised in the minutes and in the letters. You know, they were raised, and yet they weren't met.
can we look at Claire Williams' reply? This is TMO 008378882. She replies to your letter on the 8th of April 2015. And in the second paragraph, paragraph 2 on that first page, she says, let's just look at it together. Consultation. This has been ongoing since 2012. In 2014, we asked residents on their preference for consultation, as obviously fatigue had settled in. 90% asked for the individual information through their letterbox, newsletters or updates, but we have continued to hold informal sessions and drop-ins to reach more people. Since your residency, this has been held on 26 September, AM/PM, in the foyer, and also on December 14th, January 15, AM/PM evening, in flat 145, to evidence the heating layout. Now, first of all, so far as you were concerned, is what Claire Williams is saying there about newsletters, updates, informal sessions and drop-ins true?
I wasn't aware at the time
I see.
about those things.
So is this right, Mr. Collins, when Claire Williams set out what I've just read to you in this letter, that was news to you, was it?
They weren't in my mind at the time
Right.
at all. I did not know about them.
Right, I
I
see.
couldn't think about them. They were the past, right? We were there in the present and we didn't have consultation. I didn't know what to do.
You say they were in the past. This is April 15, and she's explaining that there have been informal sessions and drop-ins in December and January. It wasn't to be fair to the TMO, it wasn't the distant past. And so what I'm really just keen to explore is why you would say that what she's saying there is either not true or insufficient.
Where do I start? By April, we had an understanding, or we began to understand what it would. How hard is this? To try and talk about something. It's really hard to explain. We weren't happy, or people weren't happy about the destruction. They looked like they weren't happy about what was happening within their flats. And that's distant in time from when they told us it would be all right. They told us certain things in December, and then in January they changed the plan. So we hadn't had a consultation about that.
Right.
So what I mean, the consultation, it wasn't met. It wasn't. The requirements weren't met. The requirements of consultation weren't met. There wasn't enough consultation at the time it was needed.
So I'm just trying to understand, are you saying that there was consultation, but you weren't involved in it, and then it stopped, and you were complaining about it stopping?
It wasn't a stop.
Right.
I don't understand.
Well, you see, in paragraph 2 of this letter, Claire Williams is responding to you and explaining that there has been consultation and giving you the details of what it was. And I suppose, Mike, to put the question another way, what was wrong with what she was saying there?
It wasn't adequate.
Wasn't adequate
to the task. Yeah, it wasn't adequate.
And what exactly was it?
It wasn't up to the scale of the problem.
Right. And what would have been up to the scale of the problem that you weren't seeing but you wanted to see?
I don't know. Yeah, I have worked in instances where we've developed engagement strategies where we've engaged people and we found out their needs and their requirement, like what they need, right?
Yes, I see. Can we go to page 2 of this letter, her response? I just want to ask you about.
We wanted to have a safe place to live.
Of course.
I don't know, and we weren't met in that desire.
I see.
We didn't feel like we were ever met in our desire to have a safe tower. I don't understand. The requirement of community engagement is to have something be met, have the community engaged. And if we're not, then how do we do it? We can't move them. we can complain, but we can't move them towards us. We can't get them to do something.
No, I understand that. Let me try to see if I can put it a different way. In an ideal world, what would you have wanted Claire Williams to have said to you that would have given you complete reassurance?
Okay, we're interested to hear what you'd like to do about this. I don't know, some show of interest. We did have a show of interest. It was later. It was near to Christmas in 2015. And it was after several things had happened, and we had our MP visit, and then Sasha Javan was interested to meet and to move forward in some way to begin to understand, like, what was happening but the problems, There was a point at which there was only a point, it felt like, where there was an interest in doing something different.
Yes, I see. Can I then go back to this letter, paragraph 3 on page 2, which should come up now. And she says, works, let's just read this together. She says, works, the health and safety of the works is subject to rigorous inspection by Ryden's own H&S team, as well as the clerk of works employed by the KCTMO. There have been comments on the workmanship to the communal area, but it is all work in progress, as we need to test pipework before it gets insulated and boxed in, and at that point plastering and decoration is undertaken. At the time, Mr. Collins, do you remember whether you found that explanation that these were works in progress reassuring or not?
Not really.
What about the fact that Ryden's health and safety team and the clerks of works were undertaking inspections? Did you find that reassuring?
There wasn't a lot of trust about Ryden or the clerk of works.
So what was wrong with the reassurance, or what was insufficient about that reassurance?
I don't know.
Did you respond to this letter at the time, pointing out the deficiencies in Claire Williams's response?
I did.
You did?
I tried, at least.
Right.
I felt uncertain that we were getting anywhere with the community's sense of it wasn't fair.
Well, we may come back to the response later, but can I then ask you some questions about the foundation of Grenfell Community Unite? Now, you cover that in your statement, paragraphs 27 and 28, where you describe the residents' meetings on the 17th and 26th of March 2015. If we just have that up in front of us, it's your statement at page 6, please, para 28. And you say there that there'd been a meeting on the 17th of March, this is paragraph 27, with 100 residents in attendance, but you were away, and there was another meeting the following week, which you deal with at paragraph 28, and you say that, you see that there, you say, following that meeting, Edward set up the next meeting for 26th of March in his flat, 134. He invited as many residents as possible. I was part of the group who met that evening. There were approximately 20 households in attendance. We quickly inaugurated and committed to a residents' voice stroke group to speak together with the TMO and Ryden, which was named Grenfell Community Unite. Now, that's what you say in your statement. Now, I've read that to you so that that's the background for the questions that I'm now going to ask you. Can you go, please, to TMO 00846124? TMO 00846124. This is an email exchange in April 2015 between Edward Defan, Claire Williams and you about Grenfell Community Unite. And if we go to page 3, we see an email of the 6th of April 2015 from you to Claire Williams, copied to Edward Defan. And in that, you can see in the second paragraph, do you see it says, as you know, on the 17th March 2015, upwards of 100 residents gathered in our community rooms. And you explain that there, and the next paragraph, and you can see, if you look down the page, problems with the works are identified. And then if you turn to page 4, the next page, still within your email here, you can see that about halfway, just below halfway down, you say, on the 26th of March 2015, representatives from approximately 20 households in Grenfell Tower gathered to form Grenfell Community Unite as a community/residents group. We believe that by so doing, residents can speak with a collective voice to address our concerns regarding the improvement works. And then you go on, at the bottom of the page, three paragraphs up to ask for a meeting with the TMO. And if you look at the foot of the page, page 4, and over to page 5, you say this, just read with me. You say, as time is such a pressing issue, please could you respond by 5 p.m. on Wednesday, 8th of April 2015. 2, confirm your willingness to acknowledge the Grenfell Community Unite group as a resident/community group, a representative voice for the tenants, leaseholders and renters of Grenfell Tower. And then over the page, top of page 5, confirm your willingness to meet with Grenfell Community Unite members in a public meeting to discuss the aforementioned issues and a number of specific requests we have for TMO and Ryden. You see that? Now, why did residents need a collective voice?
We didn't feel individually that we would be listened to. And we weren't, was our experience. And many people.
What was your personal experience of not being listened to as an individual?
I've been told not to worry about the windows, for instance. Told not to worry about things, to not do it, to not have a voice.
Can you recall a specific complaint or concern or worry that you had about the refurbishment which you tried to raise yourself with the TMO before March 2015?
Before March
2015.
Yeah, I hadn't really much about the refurbishment.
What about on other issues?
Before that time. Yeah, I wouldn't want to talk about that at the moment. I did have someone try to break into my flat, and I wasn't, my complaint was not met joyously. I was turned around and dumped on. That's not factual. Yeah, I was dumped on. I was told it wasn't my fault. Yeah, I was questioned about why I'd even have someone try and break into me, like it was my problem.
Right.
Trying to turn it on the victim and not have any responsibility. That was my feeling.
I see. Can I ask you, did you try and raise these concerns?
Yeah, there were several times I raised fire safety or issues throughout the.
Right. Did you try to raise concerns about the refurbishment yourself with Ryden?
Or with Ryden and TMO.
Right. Did you use...
I raised things about the boiler location, and they weren't listening to those. So in a one-to-one situation, they could kind of ignore and not take any notice. And they would tell you things that were... that they weren't sure. Maybe you won't have hot water, If you don't do it the way we'd like you, then you might not have hot water. There were subtle threats. And I wasn't sure about those things as an individual. Yeah, as a group, we knew full well they were using that tactic with others. And the vulnerable were less likely to be able to resist those kind of tactics. Forceful.
Right. Does that mean that Grenfell Community Unite would only be raising issues, concerns, worries, complaints that were common to everybody in it?
That was the plan.
That was the plan. So it wouldn't be.
Design.
Am I right in thinking that it wouldn't be a mechanism or group for individuals to raise individual concerns or complaints that were not within the norm experienced by the members?
We needed to. It was so bad, we needed to. We had our counsellor. Eventually, she was able to try to get the TMO to do something about individual complaints. But like, she didn't do so well. It reached a point where she couldn't get purchase. She was a TMO board member. But once she started to talk in a way where she wanted to take forward our issues, then she wasn't listened to. It's quite hard to explain what happened. But individual issues became quite important to her, and we had to try and find a way to take individual issues to the TMO through her, or if we couldn't do it, then by email, the complaints process. It didn't seem to produce much of an outcome, the complaints process.
Was that Councillor Judith Blakeman?
Correct.
Right. And why not use the Lancaster West Residents Association?
There was a woman who couldn't use the bathroom. She had to walk, I think it was, to Shepherd's Bush to be able to use a bathroom. She didn't have and there was just things like we had to raise these sorts of concerns.
Yes, I've seen that in the papers. I understand that the nature of the complaints. But what I'm just trying to get a handle on here really is the nature.
And I wasn't sure this was the real one. Like how could you have a building where people live where they're not able to use the bathroom and they are vulnerable?
Yes.
Like it's not real. Well, it is, but it's not a joke.
Did you know that of the existence of the Lancaster West Residents Association?
I did.
Was there a reason why you and others couldn't use the Lancaster West Residents Association as the conduit for bringing home your concerns and complaints and issues to the TMO that way?
As far as I knew, they were not functioning. And I did try to email and to telephone, and was no response.
Yes, I see.
They were not functioning, as far as I'm aware. I never met them until the new members, September 2015. Can
we look at another document together? TMO, I'm so sorry, Mr. Collins, I may have cut you off in your
the moment we could have been met in our complaint, like it was early in the year, it wasn't late, it wasn't 2016, it was earlier, we'd have needed to be met with, the community would needed to be within the tower would need to be met with by the TMO, and it would have been early 2015.
Right. Can we look at TMO 00?
It's okay.
No, if you want to add something, please do. I don't want to cut you off.
There's legal threats against people who wanted works done in the manner they were told. There were legal threats,
Can I show you TMO 00846102? Now, this is an email from Claire Williams to Peter Madison, copying David Gibson in, dated the 13th of April 2015. Now, I certainly don't expect you to have seen this at the time, but I just want to show you what it says in the third line. It says, Robert Black walked by on Friday, and we discussed the fact that the preference was not to meet up with the Grenfell Community Unite group, which could be a showcase for Mr. Defan. Do you... I have to ask you this question. Let me ask... I'm sorry.
I can't talk about Edward the Fawn, you know? It's like, how can you do that? How can you not listen to a tower block for one reason? And to blame someone for the problem because you can't do your job.
Well, I've put you the document because I wanted to ask a slightly different question. Perhaps in the light of your answer, forgive the question, but I think I should ask it. At any time, did you yourself think that Grenfell Community Unite might have been a showcase for Mr. Defan?
Do you seriously want me to begin to try to answer that?
Well, the reason I do is because there are other people in this inquiry who would like me to ask that question, and it is of interest because there are two sides to the story.
Then.
So no.
No.
Can I take you back to your statement?
That's the problem. There was a story about two landlords of a free house, and it caught fire. And they didn't wake up. Yet there was two people in the street saw the fire and entered into the fire to wake up the landlord. And on waking up, he found he'd set his own house on fire. His buns had caught fire in the kitchen, and he took it out on the people. Like, he didn't think it was his fault. He didn't want to admit his mistake. And I just can't believe we're doing this. Trying to take it out on. It's a disgrace.
You see, the reason I'm asking you that
Wasn't
is
one
because
person.
that was the recorded internal view of the TMO.
There are-
and I'm just asking
There
you
are
to comment on it.
videos, there are recorded meetings where we have, 20 people talking about the same issues. It's not Ed. There are.
Can we go back to your statement at page 10, paragraphs 43 and 44? And you say at paragraph 43, the TMO did not and would not agree to meet a group of residents from April through July 2015, despite knowing of the Janet Edwards email of 17th September 2014. This caused great consternation to many residents in the community group. As a result of this environment, in the early days of the Grenfell Community Unite group, April or May 2015, we had to focus our attention where we could make progress. In doing so, we let go of some of our broader safety and well-being concerns. We had instead to focus on the most basic of engagement issues, for instance, being acknowledged by local authorities as having a voice. You refer there to the broader safety and well-being concerns there. What safety and well-being concerns were you referring to?
I don't know. You'd be best to refer to minutes. Like, I haven't got the wherewithal right now.
Right.
I'm a bit upset
Okay.
to talk about the detail.
All right. Would it help to take a break? Would you like a break?
I'm okay.
All right.
I'm all right.
Okay.
But I don't want to talk about. They're in the minutes. So, I'd be happy to talk about the minutes where they're described in detail.
Well, let's move forward then in time. May 2015, MET 3070991. This is a letter from
Mr. Miller, I just wanted to say it's a long time ago, and to remember the detail as well as being upset, it's quite hard to do.
No, I understand. Well, let me be a little bit more
The
specific
minutes
in my.
explain during the minutes.
Oh, I understand. Let's tread a little bit more carefully then with the next document. MET 3070991, page 3. This is an email or a letter from Grenfell Community Unite, Pilgrim Tucker, to Robert Black at the TMO. And it's dated the 13th of May. And it's also sent to Nicholas Paget Brown, the then council leader, under a separate email. And if you want to see that, I'll show that to you as well. And you can see that Pilgrim Tucker, who was the community coordinator, wanted a meeting, basically, with residents. Do you know why Pilgrim Tucker wrote to the chief executive of the TMO?
She'd asked us if we would like her to do it, or unite the union to do it on our behalf, because we'd made no headway ourselves with the authorities.
What? Right.
We thought she might be able to get an audience or a meeting with someone.
Why did Pilgrim Tucker write to the chief executive of the TMO and the leader of RBKC and not to you or Mr. Defan? Do you know?
Oh, we're fully aware. We were copied, I believe.
Did you receive a response to these letters?
Hold on. Can I check? Is there a signature?
Well, that's a good question. I have the document in front of me and I can go to the bottom of the page. Pilgrim Tucker.
Please.
Is who signed it. That's there on the foot of the page.
So CC.
Yes. If you want to see the emails that sent them out, we can look at those.
We were fully aware of the letter and its purpose. We were trying to get a meeting.
Yes.
And she was able to do that. Well, eventually. But not with Robert Black.
Did you receive a response, or did Pilgrim Tucker receive a response to these letters that you know of?
Never. We did not.
Now, one of the steps, is this right, Mr. Collins? One of the steps that you took as a group was to make contact with your local councillors. I think you mentioned Judith Blakeman. Do you remember why you felt it necessary to take that step?
Because blinking no one else would listen to us. We tried every way we could possibly find to get a voice and to be heard.
And is it
was
right?
a blog, right? But that wasn't our voice. That was Ed. That was Francis. That wasn't the voice of the tower.
Yes, I see. And do you remember, is this right, that through Judith Blakeman and Robert Atkinson, the councillors, you were able to get a meeting on the 11th of July 2015?
Could you repeat, please?
Yes. Well, I can show you your witness statement where it's set out. Page 14. It may help you if you see it in your statement. Page 14, paragraphs 58 to 63. And you explain at paragraph 58 and following the lead up there, if you just read in your statement, that Pilgrim Tucker told residents that Councillor Blakeman's willingness to meet, and there were then notices in lifts and a film made by Constantine Grass. And at 61, you say, as a result of this meeting, Councillors Blakeman and Atkinson persuaded the TMO to agree to meet the community about their concerns. We asked for a meeting in the Lancaster West Estate community rooms, as insisted on by the TMO Ride, and the meeting happened in the Shea Flat, Flat 145, on the 11th of July.
Yeah.
That's what you say in your statement. Did you attend the meeting on the 11th of July, 2015?
Yes.
Do you know, to the best of your recollection, why they agreed to meet you, having previously refused to do so?
I don't know.
Did they explain?
Councillor Blakeman may have. I don't know.
Did anyone at the meeting explore that question? Did anybody ask, how come you're prepared to meet us now but not before?
I don't think so.
Now let's move on in time. MET 30 41424. this is, when it comes up, you'll see it, the letter that Councillors Blakeman and Atkinson prepared in order to report back to the residents about the meeting. And you can see that it's dated 16th July 2015, and it says, "Dear Grenfell Tower resident," you see that? And,
I do.
And in the first paragraph it says, "We are writing to report back to you on the meeting held last Saturday with residents of Grenfell Tower, Peter Maddison, Assets and Regeneration Director of the TMO, and Simon Lawrence of Ryden. The meeting was facilitated by ourselves, Councillors Robert Atkinson and Judith Blakeman, and was very well attended. The issues raised were as follows." And then you see, if you look down the page with me, we'll scroll, it deals with the siting of the HIU boiler unit, electrical safety, and then if we scroll down, pipe work, and then scroll down further, access to the flat, security, and then over to page 2, please, general everyday working, individual matters, and then complaints, and then redecoration, and after that time frame, and then action. Now, I've shown you that letter very quickly, Mr. Collins, and I know this was some time ago, but on what I've shown you thus far, do you remember seeing a copy of this letter when it came?
I do. Kind of. I've seen it in email, for sure.
Now, looking at the very bottom of page 3, just above the signature, it says, "Victoria Borwick MP is visiting Grenfell Tower on Friday, 17th July, and she's been given a copy of this letter. Unfortunately, we do not have the resources to circulate it to every household prior to her visit." Do you know, given what's said there, whether this letter was circulated among all the other residents of the tower?
I do not.
Do you know in general whether other residents, other than you, and those in Grenfell Community Unite, received this letter?
I do not, unfortunately, no.
Now, the headings that I've shown you set out the issues discussed. Do you remember whether any fire safety specific concerns were raised at the meeting?
They were, yet not the ones we would have liked to if we'd known.
No, I understand that. Can you tell us what they were?
There were concerns about electrical outage, the shortage, about the HIU. I don't know of others. Fire safety.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
know.
In general, Mr. Collins, did you get some comfort, or any comfort, from this letter that at last, to some extent, Ryden had been engaged on issues troubling the community for so long?
Not really. Not until we met our MP.
Right,
And then I felt certain something would change,
right.
maybe. But we'll see.
And why did this letter not give you at least a grain of comfort?
I don't have a sense of that.
Okay.
It just didn't feel like we'd made any ground or been heard. And there was an argument within the meeting.
Between whom?
Between the TMO and Ryden and ourselves.
About what?
We weren't ignorant, yet we felt like we weren't treated well.
Could you elaborate a bit more?
There's someone in the meeting, one of the supervisors, and he wasn't very sure of himself. He said something which was a bit foolish, that we should be grateful for what we have, rather than grumbling about problems that weren't ours, or we shouldn't worry about things.
Right.
He wasn't very happy. He was angry, and there was a reaction.
Right. You say one of the supervisors. Which organisation did that supervisor belong to?
Jason, no, yeah, I shouldn't.
Ryden.
Right.
Can we go back to page 2 of this letter? To the residents. Complaints. I showed you the heading. I'll show you the text. It says, although Ryden are available to receive complaints, the TMO is not, and it is difficult to raise issues with them. The TMO out-of-hours service is a disaster. Residents have reported on many occasions when lifts are not working without response, when the water was turned off, no water bottles or other arrangement was offered to affected households. There is a need for both the TMO and Ryden to treat residents with proper respect, engage with them properly, and apologise when an apology is justified. Mr. Madison said he was at the meeting to apologise on behalf of the TMO when services are not working or things go wrong. Do you agree with what is said there, namely that Ryden were available to receive complaints but the TMO was not?
Ryden would receive complaints. Yeah, that's fine to say. But they weren't really there to resolve. If there wasn't a will from the TMO to implement a solution, the client wouldn't do anything. So what would Ryden do in those circumstances? I wouldn't do anything if the client didn't require me or pay me to.
Yes, I see. What kind
The
of...
client was very engaged with us.
I'm sorry, I overspoke again, and it's my fault. Could you just repeat what you just said?
Out-of-hours service. Yeah. And this is Judith Blakeman, who's a TMO board member. Remember, she's writing this about her own organisation.
Yes. Yes. What kind of complaints were residents raising with Ryden?
Out-of-hours noise, workmen in lifts, workmen's been inappropriate on the outside of the building, making noise, interrupting people's... They may be working shifts and trying to sleep and they weren't able to. There were babies who weren't needing it quite all the time, but they needed their own space and they weren't able to have it. I mean, there were so many lifts at the weekends, lifts not working, doors not functioning, not being fixed, not being repaired in time. I mean, I don't want to go into it all.
I mean, this may be a...
Doors were open and then people were able to bring rubbish and there were fire risks, associated with having rubbish in the base of the tower and not being able to get rid of it, and no doors locked, so you can't prevent people from bringing their rubbish in. I mean,
right.
And then blaming residents for things that they couldn't do. I mean,
I see. Can we go to TMO 00852-424, please? This is what I'm going to show you is part of an email chain between Peter Madison at the TMO and Councillor Judith Blakeman about the letter to residents that I've just shown you and we've looked at together. Can we go to page 3, please? The particular email I'd like to look at with you is dated the 16th of July from Peter Madison to Councillor Blakeman. And in paragraph 4, he says, KCTMO has a very clear complaints policy and a number of residents who attended the meeting on Saturday have used it quite extensively in the past. It is quite misleading to suggest that it's difficult to raise issues with us. We hold regular and frequent drop-in sessions in the block, in addition to a wide range of other potential points of contact. As you are aware, some residents have been actively encouraging residents not to engage with Ryden and KCTMO to serve their own agenda. I just want to put a number of things to you, because that's what Peter Madison has said in this communication. First, do you agree that KCTMO had a very clear complaints policy?
no.
Had you ever seen its complaints policy?
Never in all my time there.
Did you know it existed as a document?
Eventually, I didn't know or hadn't heard of a document.
Did the TMO never bring to your attention the existence of a document called complaints policy?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Right.
Don't think we had.
Were you aware of any residents who encouraged others not to engage with Ryden and KCTMO?
I wanted to talk with them as a group and have a grown-up conversation.
Yeah.
That was the only thing. We wanted a voice. We wanted to talk to them.
See, Peter Madison is...
from their ability to move forward the project. We didn't want to take away from the tower or from the refurbishment project. We wanted to put things right on track.
Yes.
I don't understand.
You see, well, I just need to ask you what you know of this allegation.
They wanted to distract us and to not listen to what we had to give. They didn't care about our concerns, is the appearance. I mean, in all fact, they didn't care because they didn't meet with us until forced to do so by our MP.
Can we look at the last sentence of paragraph 4 together? I'll read it again. As you are aware, some residents have been actively encouraging residents not to engage with Ryden and KCTMO to serve their own agenda. To the best of your knowledge, Mr. Collins, was that true?
Not to my awareness.
Right.
There may have been.
And when Mr. Madison says that there is an agenda to serve their own agenda, to the best of your recollection of what you perceived at the time, did anybody involved in the Grenfell Community Unite group have an agenda?
An axe to grind?
If you like.
I don't know. We'd like to have a safe home, somewhere to live, be at peace. I don't know, be quiet in the evening. I wouldn't think our job is to try to improve the TMO, yet we ended up having to try and do that. Makes no sense. Why would we do that?
Do you remember, casting your mind back to the 11th of July meeting, before this email, whether there was any discussion at that meeting about the complaints policy?
I'm sorry. I didn't hear.
I'll repeat the question. Do you remember doing the best you can?
Can I take a break, actually?
Mr. Chairman, yes,
I
we
think
should
it
take
might
a
be a
break.
good time.
Yeah, well, I was going to say in a minute or two we'd have come to that anyway, but let's take it now. We'll come back at 3:30, that's our time. I think it might be a different time, your time, but anyway, 15 minutes or so, 3:30 our time, and we'll resume then. I don't suppose you've got much opportunity to talk to anyone about your evidence, but if you do, please don't take it. All right?
All right.
All right, thank you very much. We'll see you at 3:30. All right, good. Thank you very much. 3:30 then, please.
to the end.
Right. Well, whoever has control of these things, could I ask, please, that Mr. Collins be put back in touch with us?
115.
Oh. Oh, good. Hello again, Mr. Collins. Can I just check that you can see me and hear me clearly?
Sure, very well.
Very good. Thank you very much. And you ready to carry on?
I am, thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, then I'll invite Mr. Millett to continue with his questions. Yes, Mr. Millett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Collins, welcome back. I'm going to ask you some questions now, if I can, please, about some specific complaints, fire safety related in particular, which were raised by the Grenfell Compact. The first relates to floor numbering. Now, can I ask you, please, to go to MET 40986? This is a document entitled Grenfell Tower Issues Matrix, and this is a version dating from August 2015. There was another one dated May 2016. And this is a document which you can see has a number down the left-hand side, resident issues, and a column for that, and then TMO stroke ride and response. Is this a document you've seen before, do you think?
Yes.
Yes.
Very familiar.
And I think it's right that actually you helped collate the issues in this issues matrix, didn't you?
Some of.
Some of them. And just to help your recollection, you helped, is this right, you helped Councillor Blakeman to pull this together, did you?
Correct. And everyone in the team.
Who else in the team helped?
Willie, Antonio, Marcio, Hanan Turafat, Hiwat, many other people. I'm not sure of the names, unfortunately. Dennis,
Yes.
Steve, so many people. Mariam.
Right. Now, in respect of floor numbering, can we go to number 23 on page 2? And you can see the nature of the complaint. Change floor numbers back to reflect current flat numbers and find an alternative numbering system for the two new floors. And then it says in the right-hand column...
The floor numbering was ridiculous. It was completely incredulous that you'd have a difference in 2 between the number on your door. It just didn't make sense. You'd have a number on your door, and that would be completely different from the number of the floor.
Yes.
So it wouldn't make sense. If there was a fireman looking for a door, he wouldn't know the floor.
It's right, I think, isn't it, that this issue about floor numbering had been a problem, a concern of residents of Grenfell Tower for quite some time before August 2015. Throughout
the year.
And can we just make that good by looking at a document?
As soon as it was introduced, it was a crazy idea.
Can we look at MET 70936, please? At page 2.
Even my mum thought it was crazy. She couldn't make sense of how you'd have a different number to your floor on your door.
Yes. And this is a document we looked at earlier. This is, you'll remember, Mr. Collins, I showed you this. This is the second page of the minutes of the 17th of March 2015 meeting. And if you look at the bottom of page 2, I read this out to you before, but I'll just take you back to it. Under other issues, it says changing floor numbers without consulting. You see that?
Of course.
So does this tell us that as early as March 2015, the numbering of the floors was an issue that you were putting forward to the TMO?
As soon as the first meeting.
Yeah. What happened to that complaint and that you had all raised between March 2015 and August 2015? Can you give us a sense of that?
Oh, there's no sense of any resolution to the complaint. It's like our complaint met a blank slate. Like it wasn't heard like a complaint that matters and needs solving or something better. You know, how do you do that? I don't know.
Can we go back
They
to
did send a response. The TMO sent something to RBKC, and it seems like at some point in time, I don't know how we got the information. It may even have been a freedom of information request to get the final resolution, which was nothing would be done. But at least we knew it was because the council didn't want to do anything, because the post office weren't sure about the new postcode. I mean, it just didn't make sense.
Can we go back to the matrix we looked at in the previous document, please? And go to the response that was given by TMO and Ryden. Bottom of page 2 over to the top of page 3. And the response is, as you can see, Royal Mail requires the lower floors to be numbered so that the address is easily identifiable for the emergency services in case of any incident. Floors have been renumbered and temporary signage fitted until the final version is available. The floor levels have been altered and it is not possible to revert to the old numbering. Now that was the response.
Yeah.
What did you think of that response?
It didn't make any sense. Why couldn't you find a way to make it work so the new floors had a numbering, and then you knew the old floors made sense? You knew if you were floor 18, 185 was floor 18, rather than it being 185 and then that being on the 21st floor.
Yes. Were there any concerns expressed at this time, by which I mean between March and August 2015, about the change in floor numbering in relation to fire safety?
Many times.
And can you tell us the nature of the fire safety concerns about floor numbering?
I couldn't detail all the complaints.
No, but what was the gist of the complaint? What was the gist of the fire safety problem that this numbering presented?
It's pretty obvious. You wouldn't have a clue which floor to go to if you were a fireman trying to find a flat that night.
Can we then move to a different document later in the year, TMO 100100093, TMO 100100093, page 2. I'm going to show you an email from Councillor Blakeman to Peter Madison, foot of that page. You see, there's an email from Judith Blakeman to Peter Madison and Claire Williams, copied to Councillor Atkinson and Councillor Lashari, 2nd of October 2015. Dear Mr. Madison, and then if you turn the page to the next page, page 3, she says, I'm writing to let you have the issues raised with members of the Grenfell Tower Compact at last Saturday's surgery with my colleague Councillor Atkinson in advance of your meeting next week. They are as follows. And if we scroll down to point 6, please. lower down page 3 of the document, she says, they continue to have an issue with the numbering of the floors, as do the ward councillors. Whatever the post office requires, the new system of numbering is not effective and could prove dangerous in the event of an emergency. The notices about the floor number changes are not prominent or secure, and in any case would not be helpful to children, anyone who does not read English, or indeed anyone with literacy problems. The solution the residents propose is that the lower floors should have a new name, such as Lower Grenfell. We believe that this issue does require some further consideration. Now, I think it's right, isn't it, that you weren't actually at the meeting of the previous Saturday, were you?
I don't know that particular day.
Right.
There were many meetings.
Did you know that a meeting with Councillor Atkinson was taking place that was referred to?
I did.
Yes. Were you aware of the concerns that would be raised?
I believe I was. There were minutes.
When Councillor Blakeman says the new system of numbering is not effective and could prove dangerous in the event of an emergency, again, do you know yourself what she had in mind by saying that it could prove dangerous in the event of an emergency?
There is an email I sent to her and to others about the floor numbering.
Yes. Yes. My question was slightly different. What did you have in? What did you think she meant when she said that the new system of numbering could prove dangerous in the event of an emergency?
You wouldn't know where to go if there was a fire. When there was a fire, you wouldn't know.
Right. Was that
floor. And if there was a phone call received and someone hadn't the floor number, or they hadn't told the operator like the correct floor, like there wouldn't be a way to facilitate for someone to understand if there were like where the floor was and like where the I can't understand.
She says that the notices, I read this to you, the third line, the notices about the floor number changes are not prominent or secure. Do you know how the floor number changes were shown at the time within the building? So this is...
You've got photographs
15.
In my inquiry evidence. There are.
Shall I show you those? Let's see.
Quite simple A4.
Can we go to IWS 402331, please?
And they fell off within 2 weeks. They were temporary.
I'm afraid that's in landscape, Mr. Collins. And you say
they were temporary at the time.
Is that it that I'm showing you? New floor numbering.
That's it.
And if we go to IWS 402314, there it is on the floor.
Yeah, 2 weeks after.
Yes, in fact, I think less. I think you took the first photograph, according to your statement, on the 2nd of December 2015, and the second one on the 10th of December 2015. Is that right?
Because I wasn't sure about the quality of it all.
Right.
Whether it would, stay the distance.
Once it had fallen onto the floor, what happened next? Do you remember? Was it replaced?
I don't remember.
In 2016, after these concerns were reported to the TMO, can you remember what signage was in place in the stairwells to show the floor numbering as you went up the stairs?
There wasn't any, I thought.
Right.
There may have been on some or a few floors, but there wasn't any. And it wouldn't have been, it wouldn't have been correct. It would have been the old floor. If there had been a sign, it would have been the old floor number, I would expect.
What about in the lifts? What about inside the lifts?
Inside the lifts, there weren't floor wasn't there? You wouldn't be able to tell which flat was on which floor inside of the lift.
Right.
Outside the lift, there was a signage
There was, right.
on the ground only, on the ground floor only.
So if you got on into the lift on the 5th floor and wanted to go to flat,
You would not.
you wouldn't know. I see. Do you remember whether you made or whether the compact made any further complaints or raised any further concerns about the signage of floor numbering after December 2015?
All the time. I mean, we weren't sure whether we could get an answer. It was in the matrix. It was a continual issue.
Now,
It wasn't resolved.
not resolved. Now, can I ask you then about complaints about fire safety inspections? Can we go back to Councillor Blakeman's email of the 2nd of October? That's TMO 100100093 at page 3, please. I showed you paragraph 6. I'd now like you to look at paragraph 7 with me. It says this: they would like another independent inspection of the arrangements in the event of a fire. Perhaps this might be better carried out at the end of the project, although I think they have concerns about what would happen during the works in the event of a fire, especially because of the floor numbering problem. This request should also receive further consideration. Why did
I think that was a problem all the time. It wasn't just during the refurbishment.
What did the compact members mean by an independent inspection?
They wanted someone who would be independent of the TMO, RBKC, Bryden, to feel like someone independent and had a look at it.
Did you ever get?
No.
Did you ever get anybody independent to have a look at it?
I don't think. There was CS Stokes. We didn't feel like CS Stokes or any of the bedfellows of the TMO were independent. We didn't feel like there was ever independence of opinion or oversight.
What was
There's no
it?
overlooking the TMO. There's
you
no
were-
ability to speak to them, never mind have an independent opinion over their operations. You couldn't get a sight of things, not independently. Even the council weren't able or willing.
Can we go to TMO 00829535? This is an email dated the 11th of April 2016 from Judith Blakeman to Peter Madison, and complaints copied to you as well as Edward Defan. And the subject was external fire alarm incident at Grenfell Tower. And she says, "Dear Mr. Madison, a representative of the Grenfell Tower Compact attended the councillor's surgery last Saturday to ask us to inquire formally about the recent incident involving the fire alarm that went off at Grenfell Tower. This incident occurred on the afternoon of Sunday, 3rd of April. The internal fire alarm was set off and activated the fire smoke extractors throughout Grenfell Tower, automatically shutting down the communal heating system. The first person to attend the incident was the TMO's heating engineer, rather than the fire brigade, and residents are asking whether there is a link between the fire alarm being activated and the fire brigade at North Kensington Fire Station being notified. Pausing there, do you know which representative of the Grenfell Compact Councillor Blakeman was referring to?
Edward,
Right.
I believe.
Were you informed of this issue before Councillor Blakeman's email?
I was not. I may have been. I'm not sure if I was copied on the original.
Do you know why the issue was raised with Councillor Blakeman instead of the TMO?
Because she was the only person who would listen to us by this point.
Looking at the third paragraph down, you see they say they would like confirmation that there is an automatic communication to the local fire brigade when the fire alarm and smoke extractors are activated inside Grenfell Tower, clarification as to how the residents of the tower should react on discovering a fire in the common parts of the tower, and who is responsible for shutting down the smoke extractors in the event of a false alarm. Then, if you look at the last sentence of her email, she says, can you also advise whether the fire brigade will be undertaking a full review of the fire safety arrangements at Grenfell Tower once all the works are completed? Now,
I thought this was an important email at the time, and yet it wasn't met or resolved.
we saw earlier an email of the 2nd of October that members of the Grenfell Compact had asked for an independent fire safety inspection. This email asks again for a full review of the fire safety arrangements. Can you remember what it was that led to these concerns about fire safety and a request for inspections?
Edward would be better able to answer that.
Right.
I wouldn't be able to adequately.
Okay.
I know about concerns, but I don't know enough to say it clearly.
Okay. Were you aware at the time that the TMO commissioned regular fire risk assessments for Grenfell Tower?
I was not aware.
So it would follow that you wouldn't know, or didn't know, that you could ask for a copy of the fire risk assessment from the TMO and read it for yourself?
I did not.
Right. Did Mr. Defan never tell you that?
You didn't, or I don't know.
Right.
You may have.
I see.
I wasn't listening if you was telling me.
Right. Okay. Can I just ask you then some questions about the complaints process and take you on a little bit back a little bit in time to December 2015. Can we go to TMO 00846 242? TMO 00846 242. Right, there it is. Now, it's a document entitled Grenfell Tower Compact Meeting, 14th December 2015. And you can see the attendees listed in the first paragraph there. You've got the MP, Victoria Borwick, Councillor Judith Blakeman, Peter Madison, and Sasha Jevons from the TMO. And it goes on to say, throughout the meeting, residents also raised matters of individual concern to themselves, which are collated at the end of these notes. David Collins, DC for the Compact, said that residents wish to raise 4 issues. And then they're numbered. I'll just show you what the 4 issues were and then ask you some questions. If you look on the first page, you can see the first one is the location and or relocation of the HIUs. And then if you go down to the bottom of page 2, you'll see the second one is an independent investigation into what had gone wrong, including the effectiveness of the complaints procedure. 3.
We wanted an independent investigation into the TMO and its handling of the regeneration works. At the time, that was the most significant thing we could have gotten.
Yes.
So all we wanted really was an independent investigation
Yes.
to uncover what might have been uncovered.
Yes. Can I just finish this little tour of the document, just to remind you of what the 4 points were you raised? The third one is on page 3, the state of the building and making everything good at the end of the process. And then the fourth one is compensation for residents who'd spent their own money making works good in their homes. And then underneath that, matters raised of concern to individual householders and various particular complaints from particular individuals in relation to their particular homes. Now, I showed you all of that. Were the 4 issues that I've shown you in this document issues that the Compact had prepared together as a group?
Yes, correct.
Yes.
We prepared those before the meeting.
Was the idea that at this meeting you, Mr. Collins, would speak for the Compact?
We'd voted on those. We'd done a workshop thing to establish what were the most significant things
I see.
to raise at that.
I see. And that workshop was before this meeting, was it?
Yeah.
And were you
And then
deputed? Sorry.
I hadn't raised them all in the meeting myself.
No, I'm not suggesting that these were just off your own bat. And my question was the idea that you would speak for the Compact as a group, and then the individual concerns would be raised separately by those who had them?
I don't know. As I remember, the meeting was quite tough. There were a lot of individuals with the presence of mind to explain to the MP their own individual troubles.
Right.
So we didn't do all the things that I'd like to have done in terms of the Compact and what we wanted to do with an independent authority to look into the TMO.
Right.
We weren't able to get to that.
I see. So just summarising it, is this...
There is a meeting audio. There's a recording.
There is. There is. But is this fair as a summary, that the 4 issues that you raised were issues common to all those in the Compact, and the individual issues raised at the end were just those experienced by those individuals?
I haven't read the individual issues. The common issues were discussed, they were raised, and they were voted on by everyone. They were the most significant and important issues at the time to us.
Now let's go back to the middle of page 1, under complaints. Under location or relocation of the HIUs. We can see there's a paragraph at the very bottom of the page that says, VB asked the TMO to blitz all the outstanding work so that everyone would have heating and hot water by Christmas. So he asked the TMO to visit every flat to ensure that heating and hot water were available. Then the other outstanding issues should be addressed. And then it continues, SJ, that's Sasha Jevons, said that the TMO would door knock every flat in the coming week. VB, that's Victoria Borick, asked that all complaints should be recorded at these visits so that there was no need for residents to go through the complaints procedure, which was both time-consuming and tedious. She was surprised that the TMO was relying on the complaints procedure. She felt that going through the Compact would have been a more positive way of dealing with problems. Do you know what it was that led Victoria Borick to comment on the complaints procedure being time-consuming and tedious?
I would not know her experience.
Right. Was that something raised by the residents themselves, or was it just an observation that Lady Borick, or I think Mrs. Borick as she then was, mentioned herself?
An observation, I would suspect. It wasn't something I'd raised.
What did you understand her to mean when she said that going through the Compact would have been a more positive way of dealing with problems?
It would have been
More positive than what?
if they'd had the wherewithal to listen to us, to engage.
Right. Did you agree that going through the compact was a more effective method of bringing your complaints and problems and concerns about the building home to the TMO?
It would have. It would have helped certain individuals to have the confidence to talk about the problems that they faced. In the building, in the tower, the troubles they faced. They may not have had a bathroom, or their kitchen was condemned, and they didn't have the confidence or the ability or the technology or the wherewithal to enter into a dialogue, like a long-standing complaint, maybe 2 or 3 years of no resolution, and no one interested to learn or to implement a solution to your problem. And you need to face up to someone and have a conversation. It's like, that's a hard thing to do if you don't have confidence, or if you're vulnerable, or you don't feel good, or your mental health isn't stable, all these things. And we had all of this in the tower. It was a normal community.
I understand.
Wasn't everyone fabulous all the time, trying to do everything and to help everyone? But we did what we did.
Yeah, I understand.
Tried to help, and the compact would have helped.
Yeah.
And the absence of the compact would have helped the TMO. They wouldn't have had to listen.
Can I just look at the document?
Judith Blakeman as well. She helped individuals. So individuals were able to go through the MP and through our counsellor to be able to get their stories, to get their problems aired. But it wasn't. It's a desperate mechanism to have to go to your MP to try to get heard in your own community. How do you do that? And that gets to the council.
Was your impression that Victoria Borwick understood that things had got as bad as the way the residents saw it, that they had to come to her?
She got an inkling, and she didn't like what she saw.
Right.
Or heard.
What gave her the inkling, do you think? What gave her the inkling?
Hearing the stories.
Right.
I don't think it's the inkling. I think she knew something wasn't right with the tower, with mismanagement. And I doubt she was... I thought she was popular within RBKC.
Can I...
But I don't know.
No. Can I... No, it's interesting. Can I take you back to the document again? Bottom of page 2, where the second common topic...
Mr. Millett, the audio from that meeting is most informative. You really must listen to these meetings. They were recorded. There's a purpose to listening. They really explain our community well, and how we worked and how we didn't work, how we worked well.
Yes.
And what happened. It's really important to listen to those.
Yes. Well, Mr. Collins, you can be sure that they will be put into the record so that those outside this room for today can hear those. Now, can I just take you to the document, which is at the bottom of page 2, an independent investigation into what had gone wrong, including into the effectiveness of the complaints procedure. PM said the cost of an independent investigation would have to come out of the overall contract price. Residents said it should not come from the Grenfell project because the learning process would inform projects on other tower blocks that are in the pipeline for refurbishment. Residents said the lack of trust and fear of the TMO needed to be investigated independently. And then it goes on. DC asked on behalf of the compact for an independent person to investigate the outstanding issues and complaints. VB suggested that JB could do this, but JB pointed out that she had already tried and failed to get a number of matters resolved. It was important that it should be looked at by an outside person, independent of the council and the TMO. Now, just that last sentence there, do you remember who it was that said it was important that it should be looked at by an outside person, independent of the council and the TMO? Was that you, or was that Victoria Borwick?
Several people. It was Lady Borwick, Judith Blakeman, myself. The whole, I mean, that was our most significant, that was our number one issue.
Yeah. And why did you ask, or she asked, for an independent person to investigate the outstanding issues and complaints? What was the value of independence here? Can you explain to us?
The TMO had a monopoly, effectively, on social housing in the borough. They didn't have a monopoly. I think they did have. I don't understand fully, like why or how you have a monopoly. But I do know about power dynamics, and if you don't have competition, like your performance, it isn't necessary to perform to a high level without any competition. And in the borough, there was an absence of competition in social housing, so you didn't have to perform. It was quite clear.
Was fire safety one of the concerns that you wanted the independent investigator to look at?
It wasn't the preoccupation at the time.
No, I understand.
It was a result.
Can we go to TMO 100111718, please?
Fire performance is oftentimes, at the same time, you have good quality, oftentimes your safety or your fire safety will be good as well. You know, you're not looking at fire safety independently of other qualities of a building.
Is that your experience?
Very much. You can talk to experts in the area of health and safety and they'll tell you the same thing. That's how we train people. I train people in construction businesses in the UK and overseas, in health and safety and in performance. And oftentimes it's quality, health and safety, costs. It's not independent. Safety isn't independent of quality.
Now, we may risk straying into expert evidence here, Mr. Collins. So
time to do your job properly. All right.
Better be careful with that, because I appreciate your professional background very much, but I think we better be careful.
That's what I did. That's why I got involved.
Indeed, and I absolutely understand that. Can I just show you this document? It's an email from Councillor Blakeman to various people. But in particular, Robert Black and Barbara Matthews and Sasha Jevons, as you can see. Subject Grenfell Tower issues, and it's the 4th of January 2016. And if we go a little bit lower down the page to the very bottom, you can see that what I've just shown you is a response to an email from you to Victoria Borwick on the 3rd of January 2016, which runs over to the top of page 2. And that's a detailed email I just want to look at with you. You refer to the meeting of the 14th of December in the first paragraph. Then in the second paragraph, you say, as you heard, there are many problems here. There are many individual cases, problems and issues. As a residents' association, Grenfell Tower Compact, in the language of TMO, we are overwhelmed by individual cases, many of us having our own. We found the best chance an individual has of getting a successful resolution to a problem is to communicate with the TMO through our local councillors. As a residents' association, we receive no response from the TMO to the problems of individual residents, and it occurs like there are too many individual issues for us to keep abreast of too. It is the problem as seen from the level of community we wish to see addressed, which is why we asked you to come and visit us, and why I'm writing this letter. Now, you refer there to being overwhelmed by individual cases. Why were individual cases being raised with the compact group if the role of the compact group was to deal with common issues, common to all residents, or common at least to all members of the compact?
They are common. We all have our common and slightly different issues with the windows, with the doors, with, I don't know, with the pipe work. They're all similar.
Right. So when you say there are too many individual issues for us to keep abreast of, do you mean there are too many individual instances of the same kind of complaint or same kind of concern, or too many individual issues of different kinds.
You have different kinds. You have some people who've got more severe issues, or they can't understand English, or their mental health, or they may be vulnerable. And then we've got other issues where, Edward's being victimized by people within the community, like we weren't able to do everything. And we had to put up a brave front and try and deal with, and we didn't have all the time in the world.
Right. When did Grenfell Compact receive individual complaints from residents about anything within the building?
It did.
And what did it do with those complaints? When a resident raised a complaint about something in their flat, what did the compact do?
Generally raised those through our councillors.
Right. As individual complaints or as compact complaints?
As individual and compact. There'd be individual complaints and more community complaints.
Was there a process within the compact for working out which were individual complaints affecting only one flat or one individual resident, and which were common complaints common to most or all of the residents of the building?
I'm sorry, Mr. Millett. There were many complaints, and I'm not able to explain what we did with them all. If it was obvious that a complaint was an individual, they may be able to do something to the councillors.
Did you get the impression that the compact had become the first port of call for any resident with a complaint or a problem or concern about their flat, as opposed to going directly to the TMO and using their complaints procedure?
Some would come to us and talk about their issues, yeah. Some would go to the TMO, I don't know.
If we go to the third paragraph in this email, which is still on the screen, you say, you heard but a small number of the individual issues people have faced and continue to face on a daily basis. It's shocking but no surprise to me that when we carried out our survey at the end of November, 68% of residents, 2 out of every 3, said that they experienced being lied to, threatened, harassed or pressured by the TMO in the last 12 months. I know we need to stick to the facts of what's happening rather than inflaming things, which is why we surveyed residents to get a handle on what's actually happening. Now, the 68% there, do you know how many residents you actually talked to?
Many.
Yes.
I'm not sure without the detail. In the spreadsheet.
Right.
There are numbers in the spreadsheet. 60 or 70.
And of those individuals responding, did they give you an insight about what they did about their own experiences?
Some told stories at length. I'd been an hour on the doorstep with someone talking about their issues.
Did they tell you anything about whether they'd used the TMO's own complaints procedure?
Most didn't have a clue about the complaints, even its existence.
Right. Did you ask them?
Most people, they wouldn't do it.
No.
And I don't.
Did you ask them about whether? Did you ask them? Did you ask them the question? Well, do you know about the TMO's complaints procedure?
They knew. Some had used.
Right.
Most were not comfortable with it, or with the resolution, with the solution it led to.
Now, in the fourth paragraph,
it took a long time to complain. You had to write in plain English and send a letter, an email. You might get a response. You might not. You might it might take months. There might not be a response. You had to keep on it, on them. You wouldn't get an answer. Unlikely. Well, I didn't.
Yes, I see.
I'd often have to.
Right. Going back to the email, that you wrote. In the fourth main paragraph down, fifth, I think middle of the page, you say, I believe it would be foolish. Do you see it? It says that, I believe it would be foolish to imagine the problems we and you hear about are simply a result of the construction project. Yes, the construction project has increased their frequency, but listening to people, instances of neglect, poor service, incompetence, poor communication, and even malice has been happening for years. It is the force and the number of issues which have come to the surface during the refurbishment project, which have led to the Residents' Association being formed and residents demanding something must be done to change the long-term treatment of our community. Now, you moved into the tower in April 2014, didn't you?
I did.
How did you know, or how did you go about learning about residents' concerns which predated the refurbishment project?
Spending time on the doorstep, meeting people outside the sports centre, talking to people, spending time in meetings, listening. Hours, hundreds of stories.
Right.
Like, I'm not sure I can relay, I can even remember. I got this sense that something wasn't right at the tower, and people weren't treated well, with respect. It wasn't like respect was...
Can we go to page 3 of your letter, your email? And in the second main paragraph down, you say, furthermore, do you see? You say, furthermore, given we have a slot with the RBKC Scrutiny Committee this coming Wednesday at 6:30 p.m, it would be most beneficial if you could find a moment to speak to individual members of that committee and to ask to take seriously the issues we will be raising. How did you get a slot with the RBKC Housing and Scrutiny Committee?
That's a good question. How did we get a slot? I think Judith Blakeman brokered one. We had a petition.
Yes.
Where of the 60 to 70 households we spoke to, 90% told us they'd like an independent investigation into the TMO and the refurbishment. And that wasn't a joke. We felt insulted at the time. So I don't quite know how that led to a meeting, but there was a petition. And then Judith Blakeman, most likely.
I see. Were you aware of...
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Do you want to carry... I'm sorry.
It may have been Edward as well.
Right. Were you aware of any process whereby residents of Grenfell Tower could raise a complaint before the RBKC Housing and Property Scrutiny Committee?
I'm not aware.
Were you aware that the TMO reported to the RBKC Housing and Property Scrutiny Committee?
I wasn't aware. Well, kind of. By the end of things, I was aware. But not at the time. Not in January 2016.
Can I ask you to look at MET 3070990, please? Now, this is an email chain in July 2017. We looked at this earlier on in your evidence, Mr. Collins. Can we go to page 3 at the very bottom? Where you'll see that there's an email from...
Can I interject, Mr. Millett?
Of course.
I didn't want to lead the compact. Like, it wasn't a thing for me. Like, I didn't want to do this. I would have much rather have done as little as I possibly could. I cannot be interested in the tower, and it's a bit too much. But, like, I wasn't out to get anything.
Right.
I was just listening to people and trying to represent as best. That's
Yes.
all. That's all I did. All I tried to do.
Yes.
And I'm really sorry.
No, it's very helpful to hear your story. Can I just ask you to look at this document? At the very bottom of page 3, you can see that there is a line that says, on 4th July 2016 at 2046, David Collins wrote. You see that? We'll take it slowly. Just turn the page. We can't see the addressee, but if we go over to page 4, we can see that you are writing to Rock. Now, of all the names in this inquiry that we've been able to identify, we have only come up with one candidate, and that's Councillor Fielding Mellon. Would I be right about that?
You are.
Now, if we look at the third paragraph down, you say, first, at Grenfell Tower, you see, you might count it as the fourth paragraph down. At Grenfell Tower, we recognise that we were, in effect, guinea pigs for a wider regeneration programme the council is to undertake. We know that works will in due course commence at Treverton Tower and Raymead Tower, presumably also while residents are in occupation. As well as sharing the resident viewpoint and experience, we would like to meet and discuss what can be learnt from our experiences, so that a Grenfell pathway for future tower block refurbishments can be devised to assist the council, the contractors and the TMO in the future. Our recommendations for this pathway would include, and then you have a list of them underneath that paragraph, and we can see them. Number 1, promises made to residents are kept. 2, a senior manager. 3, clear communications, personable. 4, flexibility in the approach. I'm summarising, I hope not unfairly, and so on. And also, importantly, 6, the issues residents raise are treated as valid and accurate in the first instance, respected and dealt with fairly, quickly and appropriately. It goes on over the page, but I think
I
I've
would
shown you...
have thought in April, that was so important. In April 2015, that would have been the point of time to listen. But it wasn't. The complaint wasn't heard at that time.
Now, you go over the page to page 5, and you can see that there are actually a total of 15 recommendations that you're making to the TMO in a spirit of assisting them to learn lessons from the Grenfell Tower refurbishment, I think, which is what you've said. My question is, how did you arrive at these recommendations?
Judith Blakeman helped a lot.
Right.
She had the wherewithal to begin it, I think, and then there are some that I wrote, that I added.
Right. Can you remember, just looking at back to page 4 and looking again at page 5, perhaps we can have pages 4 and 5 up together, which ones you had added? There they all are. Can you point out any that were yours?
Promises made to residents are kept. There's a senior manager, a director of resource, executive accountability, and budget control. Number 4, there's enough flexibility in the approach to communicate alternative forms of communications if they're needed. Formal collective consultation. I don't know.
What about item 10 on page 5? The TMO will ensure it knows and understands the personal circumstances of every resident and make special arrangements where these are needed.
No.
Right. Now, you exchanged further correspondence with Rock Fielding Mellon about the Grenfell Tower review, as you called it. If I can take you up to the first page of this email run, we can see an email you sent on the 11th of July 2016 to Rock Fielding Mellon, copy to Judith Blakeman. And if we look at the last paragraph on page 1, you say this: as far as I can tell, the biggest issue with the TMO report is that the TMO were asked to complete it. We can talk about the balance of power on Wednesday and how it affects people's behaviour. One of the things I've observed this past year or two is a lack of checks and balances around and upon the TMO and how it operates. The organisation being asked to investigate the allegations made about itself is a perfect example, and the apparent acceptance of the report without question is another example. There is much to say about the balance of power, but it is perhaps best to leave it till we have time together in person. I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday. How did you come to observe a, as you call it, lack of checks and balances on the TMO and its operations?
Apparently there were not any. I couldn't see any. I couldn't see anyone seeing a problem and then doing anything. There was no challenge on the TMO.
What was your understanding of RBKC's role in overseeing the TMO's management of Grenfell Tower, including its complaints processes?
Hold on, I'm not sure I follow.
Did you have any understanding?
Not to this subject.
Let me try the question again. Did you have any understanding at any time during the period we've been looking at about RBKC's oversight of the TMO's management of Grenfell Tower?
It's a bit hard. Was there oversight?
Well, that's a different question. That may be the question you had in your mind at the time. But what was your understanding?
There was an absence of oversight. That must be clear. There wasn't oversight. There wasn't accountability. It would appear there was no accountability. I haven't seen any since the inquiry begun from the TMO.
Yes.
So where were the checks and balances? I haven't seen any.
Mr. Collins, I've come to the end of...
Maybe over-egging this,
Right.
but I'm not sure. I haven't seen any checks and balances. And whether Rock was able to check and balance, like I haven't seen him again. I tried to meet him after the tower fire, and I wasn't able to see him to talk about what happened.
Why was that?
I don't know.
Did he give you a reason?
He wasn't there
Right. Wasn't right.
anymore.
I see.
He wasn't at the building.
Mr. Collins, I've come to the end of my prepared questions, but you may not have come to the end of what you wanted to say, so I didn't want to cut you off at all. Is there anything you wanted to say on the subject of the last question we discussed together?
I don't know. The balance of power. I don't know.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I have come to the end of my prepared questions, but I anticipate there may be one or two further questions waiting in the wings for me to examine.
Yes.
And it is 4:30, and I am going to trespass on your time to go beyond just to take a break to examine those questions.
Do you think 15 minutes would be long enough?
I hope it's long enough.
Well, if longer is required, you can let us know.
I'm grateful.
Mr. Collins, as you've heard, Mr. Millett's come to the end of his prepared questions, but he needs an opportunity to check that he's not omitted anything. And indeed, other people who are not sitting in the room but are watching the proceedings may wish to suggest further questions that we ought to ask you. So we will have a break now and probably until 4:45, unless anyone suggests we need more time. And then at that point, we'll see whether there are any more questions for you. I'm sorry to prolong the afternoon a bit more, but I think it's the only way we can do it, and we'll hope to get you away before very long. All right, so we'll break now. As I said to you on previous occasions, please don't talk to anyone about your evidence while we're on the break, and we'll see you at 4:45. All right? Good. Thank you very much indeed. Right, 4:45, please. Yes, well, I wonder if we could get Mr. Defan, sorry, not Mr. Defan, Mr. Collins, forgive me, Mr. Collins. I see you're back there. You can obviously see me, and I hope hear me too. Yes?
Thank you. Yes.
Good. Thank you very much. Well, now we'll find out if there are any more questions for you.
Not Mr. Defarn.
No, I said I apologise for that straight away.
Yes. Mr. Collins, I have one or two questions for you. My first is a general one. Do you remember receiving the TMO Ryden Grenfell Tower regeneration newsletters?
Some I did.
Okay,
I read some in detail with interest.
Were you aware that some of those newsletters contained reference to the TMO's complaints process and how to raise a complaint?
I did not, or
Right.
I wasn't clear.
Let me show you an example. Can we go to JRP 6028, please?
Whether the complaints process worked is a relevant line of question.
And this document is dated May 2016, as you can see, and it's headed Grenfell Tower Regeneration Newsletter with TMO and Ryden's branding at the top. And there's a recent photo of the building, and then underneath it.
By May 16, they would have included the complaints procedure because, we told them enough things by that time.
Oh, okay. That's
Whether earlier in the project it would have been.
Right. So let me see if I can follow that up a little bit, because I was going to ask you to go, please, to page 5 in this document and go to the pink box where it says complaints. And I'll just read it to you. We always want to ensure that complaints are dealt with efficiently. To help us help you, please always report problems as they happen. You should do this first to Linda Prentice or Christina Stefanu, then contact Claire Williams if it isn't resolved quickly. KCTMO's complaints procedure will then operate. Your complaint will be acknowledged within 2 working days and will investigate and respond within 10 working days. Well,
If only.
right.
Yeah,
I don't
not much of.
I don't think the transcript recorded your mirth before you answered there, but I think the audio
My
will.
reaction is a little, yeah.
My concrete question was, to the best of your recollection, when did the reference to complaints first make its appearance in the refurbishment newsletters?
I don't know.
Was it about this time?
I don't know.
In general terms, is it your evidence that the reason why this newsletter, this regular newsletter about the refurbishment included something about complaints was because of your or the Compact's efforts in that respect?
I would not have a clue.
Right. The reason I say that is because I thought you'd said something earlier which suggested that that was the case. When you
There's
received...
a likelihood it may have been included because we complained, but I don't know for sure.
Right. Did you ever yourself have cause...
That is me being suspicious.
Yeah. Did you ever yourself have cause to look at this pink box, see that there was a way you could complain to the TMO, and then utilise that route?
I always took that route. I talked to everyone.
Right.
I tried to get people on board. I wasn't able to do that. I tried, but it didn't work. You weren't likely to get a response quickly. If there were simple things, that could be fixed within a flat, for instance. If there was a fixture or fitting that wasn't quite working, you could get that resolved with a Ryden representative. You could get that working. A fixture or a fitting. Ryden would be quite amenable, or helpful even at times, if they could. The workman were quite friendly. Generally. Did their best.
Yes, thank you very much.
But that wasn't about the TMO complaints.
No. No, I understand that. Well, unless there's anything you'd like to add in answer to my question, Mr. Collins, it only remains for me to express my gratitude to you for giving us your assistance today with our investigations. So we're very grateful, and thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your time.
Yes, well, it just remains then, Mr. Collins, for me to thank you very much for making yourself available to give evidence. I'm sorry that we've gone rather longer into the afternoon or perhaps even the early evening as far as you're concerned than we'd hoped, but it has been very helpful to hear from you and to hear what you have to tell us. So thank you very much indeed. And that's all we have for you. So now you're free to finish. All right? So thank you very much, and goodbye.
Chairwoman, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Millett. Now,
Yes.
that presumably is
That is the evidence.
what we have for today.
That is the evidence for today. And tomorrow we have 4 further witnesses from the BSR groups whom Mr. Rawat will be taking.
Good. Thank you very much. And that'll be at 10 o'clock tomorrow.
Yes, thank you very much.
Good. Thank you very much. Until 10 o'clock tomorrow then, please. Thank you.